The U.S. Senate Intelligence Committee, its chairman, Marco Rubio of Florida, introduced legislation that essentially would have the Pentagon cough up all of its non-classified UFO files. Let's see them, Senator Rubio says. I think we're all down for that. And there is some momentum behind this right now. But, we'll see. We have previously reported that the Senate Intel Committee and the Armed Services Committee received closed-door briefings from Pentagon officials about UFOs, the Tic Tac case, that Nimitz incident, and other incidents. The pilots who saw them met with members of Congress face-to-face, told them what they saw, and it seems to have made an impression. The whole world is in such a strange spot right now. Maybe dropping some UFO bombs wouldn't seem quite as unsettling if it happened now. Again, I am encouraged by this news, but I'm not holding my breath. Either way, it's a big step just to have it discussed out in the open. So tonight, we're going to fan the flames a little bit. We'll cover yet another week that's been jam-packed with UFO news. We've got two guys who helped break some of that news. Join me in the second half tonight. Danny Silva of the Silver Record and Joe Mergia, UFO Joe, citizen journalists who really made a mark for themselves and carved out a niche in the world of UFO news and commentary. They both broke stories this past week, and as you might expect, they are now taking all kinds of grief for it. Kind of comes with the territory in UFO land. So in the second half, they get to tell us how they landed these stories and responded to the assorted whiners out there. Had so much news already this year and for the past 2.5 years about UFOs, specifically what the government knows, it knows but has not revealed. Now, we don't exactly know if the government is aware of what these really are, where they're from, why they're here. But we know a heck of a lot more now than we did prior to December 2017. The explosion of media coverage and congressional interest has attracted a new generation of researchers and writers, citizen journalists who've been drawn to this subject and who figured, hey, they can develop their own sources of information. They can break their own stories. These are two of the new breed, the young guns of ufology. Danny Silva, Joe Mergia, they've broken some really big stories that other major media end up carrying, repeating, and sometimes without giving credit where it's due. Danny and Joe were my guests last year on the program. Since then, they've made enough waves in the UFO world to attract their own debunkers and character snipers. Tonight, we get into the stories that they have shared, that they have broken, reactions to those stories, and reflection on all the other breaking UFO news with Danny Silva and Joe Mergia. Both Danny Silva and Joe Mergia have written articles related to our next subject, the Wilson Davis memo, and we're going to get into a detailed discussion of it now. UFO Joe, take it away. What is the memo? When did you first see it? And how did you document the process and whether you think it's real or not?
So Danny, Giuliana Marinkovića, and Paul and Chris Wolford, we have a little group of on Facebook, so we communicate privately and talk about all stuff related to this on our personal lives. We're friends. And then one day, Giuliano sends us something in the afternoon. And he goes, "Check this out, guys." And I look at it. I'm like, I think I know what this is. It's Wilson and Davis. Wilson, and I'm like, I immediately flashed back to 1997, and I was listening to Art Bell. I was living in Florida, and I was listening to Art Bell 2 a.m. Back then, the show was on 1 to 6. I used to stay up till 6 and go to work at 8 o'clock on 2 hours sleep because I was obsessed with the show. Still am when you're hosting, George. And so basically, it was Dr. Stephen Greer from CSETI was talking about how a lot of people, they don't really know what to think about UFOs. They're, when they're presented with the information. And he goes, kind of like this Joint Chiefs of Staff fella that I briefed up in Washington about a month ago. And I was like, what? What is he talking about? And at the time, he had a good reputation, but there were still a lot of detractors. So I was like, all right, this is a big deal. If this is true, he's briefing people in the Pentagon. This is huge. And he said that the person who he briefed said, I have no doubt this is all true. I'm horrified. And he was angry. In future, when Greer would tell the story, this guy was very upset that he wasn't able to get access to this information, UFO-related information. So him, and it was Commander Will Miller, who was his military advisor, Edgar Mitchell, a 6th man to walk on the moon. They were there, some other people too. And they gave him they gave Admiral Wilson a document. Oh, they didn't name Wilson until later, but it was Admiral Thomas Wilson, and they gave him a document that showed different code words for UFO programs. So basically, 2 months later, Wilson gets back to Miller and tells him, hey, I found the program. I called up, and then I actually went there, flew out there, and they're a UFO program. They told me they have material, but they said they would not read me into the program because I do not have the need to know. And he was livid. He's like, how would I not have a need to know? I have oversight all of this. I'm a Joint Chiefs. I'm a J2. This is my purview. And they, we'll tell you about the program, but, too bad. You do not have a need to know, and you cannot come in. So he complained, and his bosses basically told him, if you want to lose a couple of stars, keep going, and you want an early retirement, but just drop it. So that's the basic story. And, the documents came out online on Reddit, and so the four of us were discussing it, and it had Dr. Eric Davis in there, and I was starting to develop a friendship, and we all knew him, respected him, and we didn't want to put it out. Everybody who touches this said they didn't want to get the people involved, in any hot water. So we all just sat on it and we talked about it. And I wrote to Dr. Davis. I said, just so you know, this just appeared on Reddit. He's like, yeah, we don't know where this stuff is coming from. So 2 months later, finally somebody noticed it. 2 months, it just sat there. And finally somebody put it on Twitter, and that was it. We started talking about it. I reached out to Dr. Davis. I said, hey, your name is all over this. It's basically a meeting between him and Admiral Wilson in Las Vegas in 2002 in a car, Wilson telling Davis what he found and how he was shut out of the UFO program. And Davis, it looks like he was taking ridiculous notes, which is amazing memory he has, or he was recording. And so I reached out to Dr. Davis. So did some other people. James Iandoli got the same comment. It was no comment. So we're like, no comment? If this was a lie, if this was a bogus story, I would fully expect him to say, and I knew him pretty well at that point. I knew he would say, don't waste your time with this. This is nonsense. But he said no comment. So that's basically the story. And there's a lot more details we can get into if you have any more questions. But yeah, like I said, I wrote 24,000 words just going through every interview I could find where this was mentioned and just trying to connect pieces together. And amazingly, it was Miller's letter. Will Miller's letter was in the documents. There's a 2-page letter that's part of it. So I know Will Miller, so I know Dr. Davis, and I know Will Miller. So I was like, I met Will back in 2000. He was doing a show by my friend, Malcolm Hawthorne. It was called UFOs and Metaphysics in Tampa. And actually, that video is on my website. Malcolm is selling it. So it's a $20 download. And it's historic, George. The stuff that Miller says on there, when you compare it to what he said over the years when he had to pull back on the story, is just amazing. And I was actually able to interview Miller a week ago. We reconnected, and we were friends. And it's like, I was really lucky. James Iandoli put me in contact with him again. I had lost contact for like a year, and I really didn't want to bother him. I'm not that person. I'm like, hey, Will, remember, we haven't talked in 4 years, but can I have a quote? So I waited, and then I said, all right, a year has gone by. Some other people had contacted him, and he said the letter he thinks it's a cut and paste job. And I really didn't believe that, but I didn't know what to think. And then we talked, about a week ago, and I'm convinced he lied straight to my face. And that's not a judgment. These guys have to lie about this. This is such a sensitive subject, and I do not hold that against him whatsoever. If he hears this later, he knows that. He knows that. You can go over his letter, some of his answers to me, and it's obvious he's not answering some questions now that it's not that hard to answer. Like, is your letter, do you think the letter is fake? Are you prepared to say your letter is fake? And he's like, I just don't have any memory of writing it. So, so that's, for me, that's a little sign he's giving me that I don't have the memory. He could just say, no, I didn't write that. But there are other things in his responses to me that make it obvious. He's giving hints. He can't say it, but, it's a real letter. The documents are real. You and I know. We've spoken to so many people. You were around NIDS at the time. The people in NIDS where Dr. Davis was working 6 months, it was a few months before he had stopped working there, but he was still connected. All of those people know. Everybody knows. It's not, and the people online who are telling us it's fake, it's like, reach out to contacts, make some contacts. You don't have to talk to as many people as we did, but just a couple, and you will find out. It's like the worst kept secret in ufology, and there are people still out there saying, it's fake. I'm sorry, it's fake. So that's where we are, and I'm glad I wrote it. I'm still tired from staying up 3 days in a row, but I wanted to beat, if the New York Times is writing it like we think they are, I wanted to beat them to the story as far as that part of the story. And I'm glad I did it. And it's definitely one of the best things I've ever written. I don't usually praise my work. Usually I'm like, here you go, it's not bad, it's a transcript. But this one I really am proud of. And that's the most excited. For me, I haven't been this excited since 96 when I first got into this. And that's why I cannot wait to see what they do. There's no doubt they're working on a story. That's not even in doubt either. Somebody said, well, Leslie Kean the other day told me they're not working on it, so I'm sorry, she would not lie. And I'm like, yes, she would. This is the biggest story in the history of humanity. They're going to lie. They're allowed to lie. Let them go do their story. I mean, I shouldn't be, it would be nice to give them privacy, but I cannot not talk about this. So, yeah, they're doing a story, and it's just a matter of when will the editors publish it, when will they, approve it, and then what is actually in the article. Will it change things?
The idea that the New York Times might be working on a story about UFO crash retrieval operations is stunning, but it's hard for a lot of people to get their head around. We talked about it on the program last week, and my comment was I think they are working on it, but because of some people they've contacted, but it would be really hard to get it past the editors. It would be a really heavy lift. Danny, when you read Joe's massive opus, but you see that Eric Davis says no comment. Will Miller is kind of wishy-washy about it, and Admiral Wilson flat out denies it. Were you deterred? Did you worry that this story was going to blow up?
My whole thoughts on the Wilson-Davis document, I've just talked to too many people behind the scenes, including, yourself, George, who was around NIDS at the time. And it's a real document. It happened. I don't know if what the Special Access Program managers told Wilson, what they relayed to him, was accurate. We could debate that. So we don't know if that's true information in there. But the meeting happened. The document is real. Am I going to listen to ufologists, and nothing against them, am I going to listen to ufologists who found out about the story 20 years later or and weren't around NIDS, or am I going to listen to people from NIDS or read between the lines about what Eric Davis has done, with his government clearances and all this kind of thing? It's a no-brainer. And the whole thing that throws me for a loop is if people with government clearances don't agree, which does happen sometimes on issues. So I take that, very seriously. But if it's these great sources that have been doing this their whole life versus ufologists, I'm always going to go with the great sources first. And it's the whole matter of proof. It hasn't been 100% proven yet, but everything matches up. And when you're talking to so many people behind the scenes that know Eric Davis and know just about the story, that have known about the story for decades, it's real.
Joe, back to you. So part of your approach to this is based on a relationship with Eric Davis that you developed. You can talk to him. I have known Eric for a lot of years, and he was with NIDS. Then, as you've pointed out, he left when this meeting took place. He had just separated from NIDS, the National Institute for Discovery Science, a few months earlier, was still tied into that network and was still certainly in communication with some of the board members, Hal Puthoff and Dr. Edgar Mitchell, the sixth man to walk on the moon. And this information made it into their hands, and that's part of the reason it became public, right?
Right, and we're not here today, and it's sad. If Edgar Mitchell doesn't pass away, we're not talking about this. He passed away in 2016, I believe, and 2018, Australian James Rigney approached Grant Cameron at a conference and said, hey, I got some documents you really need to check out. And Grant's like, I'm on the way out. I got to go. And he's like, really, just give me 10 minutes. And he shows them to Grant Cameron, and one of the first names is Oki Shannon. And Cameron's like, Oki Shannon? Oh, 20 years ago, Oki Shannon. Eric Davis asked me, he said, here are Oki Shannon's notes from the John Alexander Advanced Theoretical Physics group that studied UFOs. So they were Oki Shannon's notes that Eric Davis gave to him. So there was a relationship between Oki Shannon and Eric Davis. So Grant Cameron remembered that. He sees the documents. He sees Eric Davis's name and Admiral Wilson, and he sees Oki Shannon. And he said he was like a ghost. His face turned white. He realized, this is real, So somebody went to the estate of Edgar Mitchell and got these documents, they would have been destroyed, but they saved them, and then somehow somebody leaked them. And, you know, you were asking Danny if he's ever thought this would blow up. You know, I started writing seriously about in April, and I think I changed my mind every day. Even up until, you know, it's like, this is real. I'm like, this is definitely real. And then the next day I'm like, oh, what am I doing? I'm wasting my time. This is not, obviously this is not real. Wilson has denied it already. He's denied it. Dr. Davis denies it. And then 2020, you know, we're here. I'm convinced again. And then Billy Cox does another interview with Wilson. And it was even a stronger denial, although there were some parts of that where he left open the door that there could be one of those programs. I really didn't look. I don't know. There could be one of those programs there. But even then, I was like, oh, my, this is not real. It was hour to hour I was changing. And then I met certain people I was introduced, and I talked to them, and I'm like, all right, this is real. And it just got stronger every day. I talked to more people. I'm close to Eric. He's one of my closest friends. We tell each other, you know, we share personal stuff. And he's never said these are real. He can't talk about it. But I'm confident if this was a wild goose chase, I think he cares enough about me if he would say, you're wasting your time. That's all I'm going to say. He's never said that, you know. So,
if it's real, if it's legit. So I believe that Eric Davis does not make up something like this, that these are notes from a real meeting that did happen. Doesn't mean that all the content that's discussed in there is real. It's just that that is the course of the conversation. But if it is real, what is the content for those in our audience who haven't heard about this? What does it mean? I mean, they're talking about UFO crashes and retrievals, right?
Yeah, it talks specifically about Admiral Wilson flying out to the company. It's a private aerospace corporation, one of the biggest ones. And, you know, Eric Davis says, which one? And Wilson goes, core secret. I can't tell you. That's the big word I had never heard about. Basically, you know, if you tell the secret, that program is ruined, it's destroyed, people find out about it, so it's useless. So they say core secret. And I found out about that in Leslie Keene's, I think it was 2009, her UFO book. And then originally in 2000, Bill Sweetman wrote an article about the Pentagon's out-of-control budget. So, you know, so he's asking and gets down to it. He gets to that program, and he's turned away. And they said, you know, they have an intact craft, an intact full craft. And Danny and I, you know, we disagree on whether or not we do. So Admiral Wilson flies out to this private aerospace corporation after he had called them, located them. He had help from people in the Pentagon, including William Perry, former Secretary of Defense. He finds the program. They say, we don't want to talk on the phone. Come out here. So he goes out there, and they say, yes, we're a UFO crash retrieval program. The program manager tells them they have a craft, an intact craft. They believe that could fly through space, air, water, dimensions, and there's a question mark after every one of those. And then Wilson goes, it's from overseas, and perhaps not possible. We don't know where it's from. We have some ideas, and they said it was technology that was, quote, was not of this earth, not made by man, not by human hands. And we're trying to understand and exploit the technology. So this is the story we've always heard. We've always heard, you know, in some special access program locked away somewhere, they have this. And this is basically confirming that. And do we know this is true for sure? No. Do I believe it? I believe, at the very least, I believe we have large pieces of craft. Intact crafts, I've heard that. I wouldn't say I believe it, but I tend to believe we also have that. The question is, and I asked Will Miller, when he did the interview with my friend in 2000, when I was listening to the audio, I called into the show, and I didn't even remember that. And I asked Will, I said, if this is an illegal program, how do we get access to it? And he was like, I would contact your attorney general. And another answer is, he talked about if this program was set up an illegal program, he believes the people in the program can talk about it and not face any legal repercussions. And obviously, if you're one of those people, you need to know that for sure before you're going to talk about it. So that's where we are right now.
Danny, let me ask you, Admiral Wilson, now in a second interview, has really vehemently denied that there's any truth to this. He's come out really strongly. I don't remember meeting Eric Davis. I never sat in a car with him in Las Vegas and spoke for an hour. I don't know any of this stuff. It's all baloney. I mean, he's really strong in it. That had to give you pause for a moment. But how would he react if, in fact, it was legitimate? Wouldn't he lie about it? Could he?
in the document itself, he says he's going to deny it if it comes out. I can just speculate basically now. I can say that, if the story is accurate, and we think it is, that when he was basically told to kick rocks when he was looking into this subject, maybe he wanted to vent. Maybe he wanted to leak this a little bit. So Eric Davis was vetted to him. He probably knew that NIDS was doing great work at the time, and maybe he was thinking if he told Eric Davis this, then NIDS would be able to act on it, and they would be able to not name him, although he ended up getting named, but they would be able to not name him and solve some mysteries. So maybe this was his way of kind of leaking the information. But of course he's going to deny it. He has no motivation to publicly say it's real. It would hurt him. It would hurt his career. It hurt his legacy. He may be in legal trouble. I'm not really sure. So there's zero motivation for him to say it's real.
Joe, you will recall that Senator Harry Reid, in one of the interviews that I had with him, it was after the news about OSAP and ATIP had come out. Senator Reid had written to the Pentagon asking to turn what was started out as OSAP became ATIP into a special access program. And he explained it to me that one reason for doing that is so he could gain access. The program could gain access to other stuff, other materials. It sounded pretty close to me to he was talking about metamaterials or something bigger. Did you agree?
I agree. Bernard Hayes, the physicist, he wrote an article saying the same exact thing. That's exactly why ATIP did that. I don't know if that's true. But very odd. Senator Reid, I think it was last year, it's in my blog, I called into NPR because I had interviewed him. It was last year, and I was disappointed with my interview questions. So he was going to be on NPR. So I said, all right, let me call in and tweet. I emailed. I said all the questions I didn't get to ask. And one of them was, if our government has a UFO in its possession, do you think the American people deserve to know that? And he said, I don't mean to throw cold water on it, but I do not believe we have that. I do not. And I said it was Luis Elizondo who I quoted, and he said, I don't know who said that. And then I got upset. I said it was Luis Elizondo, but they had cut me off at that point. So, and then on Unidentified, maybe he was protecting his NDA with the show because then he talks about it on Unidentified, and it's clear that's what he's inferring. So, I think, and I do think Senator Reid does know. I think he does know. And back to your point about Eric Davis, talking about people. Somebody said to me the other day, what has Eric Davis done for ufology? Tell me. And I didn't even answer. I'm like, go listen to his interviews. He's talking about the crash retrieval program that he's learned over the years through making contacts with people who do have a need to know. He explains exactly how he does that. He explains specifically that if you have clearances, you can meet up with people who also have worked on UFOs. And if they think you might at some point get a need to know, they will share information with you. And he shares it. And then somebody said, well, that means he has loose lips. I'm like, no, he's sharing generic information. He's not giving specifics. And he continues to get that information. So, he's trusted. Those people trust him. He has a very good reputation. And that's why he got the interview with Admiral Wilson. He had that reputation. And Oki Shannon really stood up for him and convinced Admiral Wilson to meet with him. And that was, and as Danny, you guys were talking about, maybe Admiral Wilson wanted to leak that. That is a story I have heard. He told Dr. Greer or Miller that he was so angry, you have my permission. This is illegal. You can go to the media if you could find people who know about this to go on the record. That's what he supposedly said to Dr.
All right.
Greer, and I do believe that.
Joe, do you anticipate a follow-up to your saga?
I didn't, but stuff keeps happening. So, and I gotta say, I would not have been able to write that article without Giuliana Marinkovića. Unbelievable. If I'm like, who said this? In what year? And he's like, I got it. Here you go. So amazing. So yeah, I definitely think follow up, and let's see what comes out. Let's hopefully, if it comes out with the Times, see who they come up with. And there are definitely other leads. There are people I would love to talk to that have been spoken to, and maybe let's see if something comes out. Maybe in the Times, maybe they'll be more willing to be forthcoming. A lot of people that, like Billy Cox, talked to a lot of people in that document, and they all denied it. So I think they're all lying. But like I said, it's a dirty word, but they have to do what they have to do. That's just the way it is, and people have to get over that.
As you pointed out, Eric Davis, when asked about this on the record, says no comment. He doesn't say it's a bunch of baloney. I never said that. I never wrote it. He says no comment, which for Eric it speaks volumes, I think.